Morning, everybody. Would love to have you take out a Bible and turn to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9. Matthew 9. So heads up, words are not going to be on the screen behind me today, so would love you to have a copy of the Bible in front of you. If you brought one, that's great. If you need one, there are red ones somewhere around you. You can turn on your Bible if you want to. There's a QR code in the bulletin. You can scan that. It'll take you to a Bible app. Or you can just look over your neighbor's shoulder and follow along with them. That's totally acceptable. So Matthew chapter 9 is where we're headed this morning in week number 6 of this series called The Quest, where we're looking at exploring the questions of Jesus. This is one of the big things that Jesus did. The way he taught is that he asked questions that provoked and invited us into a next step of faith with him. So before we get too far into the sermon, I want to just make a quick announcement that, next Sunday, when you come, there is a good chance that we may have new lights in here. So at the end of last year, we did some fundraising to try to replace these beautiful fixtures that produce a lot of heat with some brand new LED fixtures that produce a lot less energy and a lot less heat. And so we're waiting to hear back for sure from the contractor, but there's a pretty good chance it'll happen this next week. So just a heads up on that. One of the ways it plays out, and we've talked a lot about it, is the heat production that happens off of these. And so 2 weeks ago, Kevin Wilder was here. I don't know if you were here when Kevin preached. He's part of the team in McPherson. Kevin's fantastic. Great teacher, great pastor. And I told Kevin, hey man, just make sure, even if it's cold outside, don't wear a sweater, because you will be paying for it in third service. It's hot. And so he told me this week, he's like, yeah, after first service, I was fine. I thought, man, Eric way overstated how hot it is. And after second service, I was fine. And then I got to third service, and I needed a sweat rag. So he believed me after that. But Kevin and I also, we have to rumble a bit. So I don't know who you want to put your bets on for Kevin or I, who's going to win that. But he told me afterwards, he's like, so I wore a Chicago Cubs t-shirt underneath my shirt just to provoke you a little bit. So I'm an Indians fan, so there's some bad blood there from the World Series a couple years ago. So we'll have a little rumble about that, and no concerns. I've done all the proper things to cleanse the stage from the Chicago Cubs t-shirt. So it's a joke. Matthew chapter 9, verses. Let's start in verse 27. We're going to read two stories of just dramatic healing power of Jesus. And there's a question embedded right in the middle of these two stories. So here we go. Verse 27. Now as Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, calling out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he had gone indoors, the blind men came to him, and he asked them, here's the question, "Do you believe I'm able to do this?" "Yes, Lord," they replied. Then he touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." And their sight was restored. And Jesus warned them sternly, "See to it that no one knows about this." Now, let's hold it right there. Jesus is funny. Do you believe that Jesus had a sense of humor? Do you hear the humor in this? 2 blind men come to him to have their sight restored for mercy. He touches their eyes. He heals them. And what's the first thing he says to them? Hey, see to it that nobody knows about this. I think that's funny. And we'll talk about why he may have said that. Don't tell anybody. Verse 31. But they went out and they spread news about him all over that region. Verse 32. While they were going out, a man who was demon-possessed and could not talk was brought to Jesus. And it was brought to Jesus. And when the demon was driven out, the man who had been mute spoke. And the crowd was amazed and said, "Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel." We've never seen anything like this. But the Pharisees said, "It is by the prince of demons that he drives out demons." This is our text for the day. Now, if you had been walking the streets of Palestine in, year 28, right? Year 28. First off, you would have had no concept that it was year 28 or 30. It's not how you told time at that point. But if you were walking in the time Jesus was doing his ministry and traveling around teaching, you would have heard stories about Jesus. And you would have heard stories about this miracle worker from Nazareth, this guy who is doing things unlike anything we have ever seen before. You would have heard stories about his teaching and the power and authority of his teaching. And you would have heard stories about his healing power, that wherever this guy goes, people are made well, are restored to wholeness. Verse 26, right? Verse 26, it says news about this spread all over the region. Verse 31, because they didn't listen and they started telling people, it says news about him spread all over that region. Like the news was just spreading like wildfire about who this Jesus is and the kinds of things that he was doing. Does that make sense? Like sometimes we see the world through such a rationalistic, kind of natural cause and effect kind of worldview that we miss that Jesus did a lot of miracles. I mean, there's a lot of people whose lives were transformed in miraculous ways, and one of the prominent miracles that Jesus did throughout his ministry was healing people. And so right here in Mark's gospel, in Mark chapter 8 and 9, if you remember last fall, we did this series called Amazed, where we just walked through some of these miracles. You remember that? Anybody remember the teachings we've done in the past? All right, good. Changed my life, Eric. It was awesome. I still can't sleep at night. It was so amazing. So what Matthew does is he puts his gospel together, is he's telling us the story. Like he takes the story of Jesus and he organizes it, and he tells us the story so that we, the readers, will come to know Jesus. That's the purpose of Matthew's gospel. It's the purpose of the Bible, that we will come to see Jesus, to have this picture, this portrait of who Jesus is. And the way Matthew does that is he takes these two chapters, 8 and 9, and he puts these 10 healing stories, these miracle stories together in one clump. And these are the last two. These amazing, amazing stories of Jesus. So let's just kind of walk through them a little bit. First off, notice that the two blind men, they have so much to teach us about their interaction. And so just walk through a couple of things. First off, it says, somehow they perceived that Jesus was coming by. We have no background on how they knew about Jesus, what they had heard, what they knew about Jesus, what they were expecting. But it says somehow they perceived Jesus was coming by, and they got up and they followed him. They followed him. In their blindness, they followed him. How did that work? Right? That they didn't, it wasn't like Jesus healed them and then they started following him. It's like they got up in their condition of blindness and they started following Jesus. They became his disciples. This is what discipleship is. It's following Jesus. They became his disciples in the state of not being able to see clearly. How many of you have ever felt like that on your journey with Jesus? Like I feel pretty blind right now. I don't, I have some confidence, some faith that Jesus is there, and he's that direction, and I'm just going to take another step. I mean, that's what discipleship feels like sometimes, isn't it? I don't know what the future is going to hold. I don't know where this thing is going to lead, but I'm trusting Jesus. I'm going to take a step of faith. So they take a step in their blindness and take a step of faith. And then they call out to Jesus, and what do they say? They say, the first thing they call to Jesus, they say, have mercy. You remember Uncle Jesse from Full House? Have mercy. I don't think it was anything like that at all. Have mercy. Have mercy on us, they cry. Now I can't unhear it. Have mercy. Their journey of discipleship and your journey of discipleship and my journey of discipleship begins with a recognition of our complete dependence on God, of our need for Jesus' mercy in our life. I mean, that's where it all starts for us, is to say, Jesus, I've got problems I can't fix. I don't have the solutions to my problems. I can't meet my own needs, and Jesus, I need your help. That's where it all starts for us. And the thing about life with Jesus is we never outgrow that, just dependence on mercy. the closer we get with Jesus, the longer we follow him, the more and more aware, for me, the more and more aware I become of the shadows and the murky places in my own heart. And then I was like, Jesus, I need some light here on this place in my life. And so we never outgrow that sense of, Jesus, I need your mercy. I'm completely dependent on you. That's what these two blind men, they teach us. Now, here's the question, though, is how many of you, if someone you know and you love and you have a good relationship with, if they come to you and they say, hey, I'm in a really tough spot, could you help me? How do you feel about that? How many of you are like, yeah, absolutely, let's figure this out. Let's walk through this together, right? I mean, somebody you know and trust and love, they come to you for help. How does it feel? Like, you feel kind of honored that they would come to you and you want to help them. Are you with me? If you don't feel that way, let's talk sometime. We'll talk about compassion. Now, on the other hand, how do you feel if you're the person who needs to go to somebody and say, hey, I got a problem and I need help? How does that feel? I mean, is it strange that on one hand, we really like to help others? Like, we like to be able to walk with others and to help meet their needs, but we really don't like to be the one who has a need, who says, I don't have everything that I need and I need your help. It feels like sometimes it makes us feel ashamed to say, I need somebody. And I think the reason this is because we've been told this lie that the best thing we can do in our life is to become independent and self-sufficient, to not rely on anybody else for anything. I mean, that's the lie. And it's a big one. It's one that we just swim in that water and say, man, the best thing you can do is to not depend on anybody, not need anybody else. If you can be self-sufficient and independent, that is the best thing you can do. And the problem is none of us were created for independence and self-sufficiency. We were created for interdependence. And we were created to have to be completely dependent on the presence of Jesus to meet us in our places of need where we don't have our answers. And so it can become really hard for us to put ourselves in the place of these blind men who say, Jesus, have mercy on us, because we don't have our answers. And so the question that I'd love to just have us wrestle with is, where is my blinding need? And you have a bulletin outline, there's lots of white space on it, and to just kind of write down this question, if you want to, is what is my blinding need today? Like right now, as I'm here, as I'm in this worship gathering, as I'm learning about Jesus, what is my blinding need? Where's a place where I don't have the resources, I don't have the answers, and I don't like to admit it, but I'm completely dependent on the mercy of Jesus? For some of us, it might be a pattern of sin. Like there's just this fairly predictable pattern of behavior that's sin, and we've struggled with it, and we say I'm never going to do that again, and it goes fairly good for a while, and then all of a sudden something happens, and we're stuck again, and we've just been living this cycle for so long, and we come to this place where it says I can't get out of this. I don't have what I need to fix this, and to get out of this cycle. Jesus, I need your mercy. Maybe for some of us, it's a physical need. Physical pain, weakness, a condition we're dealing with in our own bodies. And we need the mercy of Jesus. Maybe for some of us, it's internal. It's a wound in our souls, and so we have an emotional need. Like there's shame that we feel, or whatever it is. And we realize we can't fix it on our own, and we need help. Maybe it's a strained relationship. Like our blinding need today is just, we have this relationship in our family, friendships that are just laying in pieces. And we realize we don't really know how to fix it. What is my blinding need today? This is where transformation begins, is this recognition of I don't have what I need. And then, so not only do they say, have mercy on us, what do they call Jesus? What's the title they call him by? What does the text say? Son of David, right? Son of David. So if you like if you're a student of the Bible, like maybe some of you have been studying the Bible like so much longer than I have. Some of you are maybe brand new to the Bible. When you see a title like this, Son of David, like we can get to the place where it just like sends these like flash bulbs off in our head. This is like, oh, what does that mean? Where does that come from? That title that they call him, it has to be significant. How is it significant? Because there's more to the story. And so the title Son of David, turn back a couple, keep your finger here in Matthew 9, but turn back to the very beginning of Matthew's gospel. Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. Matthew 1, verse 1. It says this. This is how Matthew begins telling the story. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the what? The Son of David. So Matthew is like saying, I'm telling you this story because I want you all to come to recognize that Jesus is the Son of David. Now, who is David? David was the most important king in the Old Testament. David was the one who said to have a heart after God's own heart, that God blessed David. And David was not perfect. David was full of flaws and made lots of mistakes. But he had this heart that was soft, that brought him to repentance and brought him to his place of weakness. And so God blessed David, and he made a promise to him in 1 Samuel chapter 7. He said, I am going to bless you in your kingdom, David, and I am going to, from your descendants, I'm going to raise up a son of yours, a son of David, who will come and will bring his kingdom, and this kingdom will never end. This kingdom will never be overthrown. This kingdom will bring justice and mercy and peace and grace to the ends of the earth. Now, this is amazing news. God makes this covenant, this promise to David that he would have a descendant someday who would reign forever and ever and would reign on God's behalf. I mean, do you feel how much hope is in this promise? This Son of David is going to come and is going to heal the world. And so David had a son who took over the kingdom from him. Anybody know what his name was? Solomon, right? So Solomon was a son of David who took over the kingdom. Was Solomon the one who this promise was fulfilled in? Did he become the kind of king that God wanted him to be? No. Like Solomon's heart was turned after all these other gods. He got consumed with power and wealth and all of that. And it ended really badly for Solomon. And that's how the rest of the Old Testament goes, is like, oh, here's another son of David. Maybe he's the one. Oh, no, he wasn't the one either. Again and again and again. It's just a story of failure and failure and failure you read throughout the Old Testament. So finally, you get to a place where God says, it's enough. And he just scraps the whole thing. Like Israel, Judah, like as a whole nation and as a kingdom, they're just wiped off the map. And there's no king, and there's no kingdom, and there's no one on the throne. So it looks like this promise that God had made to David was just null and void, just like withered up and died. For 600 years, that was the place of saying, God, you promised there would be a son of David, and no one has come. And Matthew begins his gospel with these words, this is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of David. He is the promised one. He is the king who's going to come, who's going to set up his kingdom that is going to heal the world. Now, here's the question. Who are the first people in Matthew's gospel to see, there's your hint, Jesus as his true identity as the Son of David? Any guesses? The two blind men. Like Matthew starts his gospel, this is the story of Jesus, the Son of David. And you read chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and nobody recognizes Jesus. And all of a sudden there are two blind men on the side of the road who call out, Jesus, have mercy on us, Son of David. The first people to see are those who can't see. Is that brilliant or what? Like, this is how Matthew tells the story, that sometimes it is those who are most deeply aware of their blinding need who can most clearly see the good news of who Jesus is. And those of us who feel like, man, we've got it all together, we are the ones who are actually blinded. This is the goodness of who Jesus is. Have mercy on us, Son of David. It is in our weakness that God meets us, not in our power. Jesus, he said earlier in chapter 9, it's not the healthy that I came for. It's not the righteous. It's not those who are self-righteous, who say, like, I have no need of you. Jesus kind of simply says, oh, okay, I didn't come for those who don't need me. I came for the sick. I came for the weak. I came for the broken. I came for those who are aware that they don't have what it takes. I think this is really good news. This is really good news for me. To say, like, it's in our place of weakness, where we are powerless, that Jesus meets us and he joins us and he heals us and he restores us. This is what walking with Jesus is. It's being completely dependent on his mercy, Now, in this text we read, there are 3 responses to these miracles of Jesus. And the first response we've been talking about is the one of the blind man. Like you could say that these blind men, they were wide open to Jesus. Like their hearts were open, their minds were open. They are all in with Jesus. Jesus, we are yours. Have mercy on us, Son of David, right? Does that make sense? So that's one response. They all kind of, everybody who's around them, they all like experience Jesus doing the same things, and some of them, the blind ones, are open and completely aware of their need for Jesus. There's another response. Verse 33, it talks about the crowds. There's masses of people who are following Jesus, and what's their response? It says the crowd was amazed, and they said nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel before. Like, we have no categories to describe what this guy is doing. We have never seen anything like this before. If the blind men, if their minds were open, like the crowd's minds are blowing, right? Up, complete amazement, completely dumbfounded. We have no categories for what Jesus is doing. So that's the second response. And the third response was from the religious leaders, the Pharisees, verse 34. But the Pharisees said, it is by the prince of demons he drives out demons. So you've got some that are open, some that are just amazed and completely dumbfounded, and then you have these religious leaders who say, yeah, Jesus doesn't fit in the way I see the world. And so they're so cold and they're so closed off that, and they can't dispute the miracle. Like, I mean, right? They can't say, oh no, the blind man, it was a hoax. He couldn't see, really. And they were never really blind. They don't dispute the miracle. Everybody knows the miracles actually happened. The only thing they're left with, the only maneuver they have is to try to discredit the power by which Jesus is doing miracles. They say, well, it's by the prince of demons he casts out demons. It's the power of the enemy that he's doing these things by. That's their only plan. But their hearts are so cold and their minds are so closed to Jesus that they perceive him, but they can't accept him. They can't really see him. And so, like, I think one of the things Matthew is doing for us in this is to say, like, so where are we in this? Like, are we in the place of these men, these blind men who are completely open to Jesus, say, Jesus, like, we are yours, meet us in our place of need? Are we in a place where we're just like, we're in the crowd and we are amazed at Jesus and we're sort of following him from the fringes, or are we cold and we say, you know what, like, yeah, you don't really fit with me. And our minds are closed off. You know what? I know the way the world works. And I know how things happen. And tomorrow is going to be just like it was today. Tomorrow is going to be just like today. This is just the way the world works. And we close ourselves off from the possibility that Jesus can actually change things. That Jesus can actually speak into our place of brokenness, that he can touch our place of weakness, and he can actually bring restoration and wholeness. And the thing, I think, that, like, as we're thinking about that, where are we in our life right now? The thing that separates, that separates, like, where we will land, comes in verse 28, and it's this question that Jesus asked the man, do you believe I'm able to do this? Do you believe I'm able to do this? This is a question about faith, isn't it? Like, the word faith is just the word trust. It's the word believe. Do you think I can do this? I've learned that when I say, hey, Carmen, check this out, and she pulls out her phone, she doesn't think I'm able to do whatever I think I'm going to do. We were at the park one time in Cary Park, and I'm like, oh, there are these little bars. I'm like, oh, check this out. I've seen gymnasts do this, and I'm just going to kind of do a little handstand on the bars. And she's like, oh, yeah, great. Hold my phone. I go do this. She takes a little video, and she laughs her head off as I crash and hit my head on the bar. She did not believe I could do this, and she was right. So now I have learned when I say, hey, check this out, and she pulls out her phone, I just scrap it. Like I shouldn't do it. This is a question of do you believe I'm able to do this? No, I do not. But this is a question Jesus asked these blind men. Now think about this. They got up in their blindness. They started following Jesus. Apparently, Jesus goes into a house, and they're stumbling along, trying to figure out where Jesus is. They go into the house. They're there with him. And then Jesus looks at them, and he says, do you believe I'm able to do this? What's their answer? Of course. That's why we're here. This is why we came, because we believe that you're able to do this. But Jesus asked this question of trust. Do you trust me? Do you have faith in me? And then they say, yes, Lord, absolutely we do. And Jesus touches them, and he heals them, and he says this. He says, according to your faith, according to your trust, may it be done to you. Now, here's where I think we misunderstand this. And maybe this is where your minds are going. Okay, so if we want to be healed, it's going to be according to our faith. That, if the healing is going to come, it's going to be according to our faith. And I think this is a big sort of misstep. We miss the point when that becomes the thing we read out of a text like this. And here's why. Because we can make faith in Jesus, following Jesus, into a formula that says if I pray in the right way, with the right amount of faith, I will get the right outcome, meaning the outcome I want. Have you heard this before? Right? I mean, if you say the right words in the right way, you've got the right amount of faith, right? Your faith, there's a level, and it's you got to get to that level of faith, and sometimes that level of faith is absolute certainty. You just have to convince yourself that you have no more doubt left in your minds that Jesus is going to do this, and if you can cross that threshold of faith, then the miracle will happen and the healing will come. Right? We're familiar with this, right? There are people who make a lot of money. Right? Just saying, oh yeah, you're just praying in the wrong way. Just adapt this, or just have a little more faith, and then you'll get the result. Now here's the thing. This is where the misstep happens. Anytime our relationship with Jesus becomes about us, and us trying to sort of conjure something up or trying to achieve a certain level before Jesus is going to interact with us, we have missed the point. It is another form of control. It's another form of saying, I'm going to control this scenario. It's up to me. And it's a form of self-sufficiency and self-reliance. And it's this really kind of distorted view. And so if we've believed this, maybe that's a place of I'm in this place of need. And so the reason God isn't meeting my need the way I would think God should meet my need, it must be my fault. It must be my problem. If I can just get more faith or just get more different people to pray for me, then this thing will be released. And I think this formula is going to cause so much pain in our lives. And we have to abandon that sense that says, it is my responsibility, it is on me. The reason when Jesus heals in these 10 stories, he never does it the same way. This is the only time he asks that question, is in the story of the blind man. He never does it in the same way so that we will avoid these formulas, these patterns of control. And we will learn to say, Jesus, it is not about me, but it's about you. And it's about you being willing to come close to the broken. And you being willing to stoop and to touch and to heal and to move toward those who admit we don't have what we need. See, sometimes Jesus, he looks at his disciples and he's like, you have so little faith. He tells them that. You guys have such little faith. You little faith ones. That's what he says. And then what does he do? He meets their needs with their little faith. And then he looks at outsiders, people who have no connection to Israel or shouldn't know the story. They're outsiders, and he's amazed. He's like, I've never seen anybody with faith like that. Not even in all of Israel. I've never seen faith like that. And what does Jesus do? He meets their needs. But the thing that stops our relationship with Jesus is when we are closed off and we say, I don't need you. I'm perfectly fine. I can take care of this myself. Self-sufficiency is what keeps us from recognizing our blinding need, our need of mercy, our place of weakness, and I think keeps us from experiencing the transformation and the presence of Jesus with us in this moment. The question for us is are we willing to entrust ourselves to Jesus? Are we willing to abandon formulas? Are we willing to just simply say, Jesus, I need you. I need your mercy. I'm dependent on you. Come meet me in this place. And trusting in his goodness, trusting in his character, trusting that he will never leave us, trusting that his example, that he lived for us. And we have the testimony of those whose lives have been transformed, that Jesus not only lived for us, that he died for us. That he joins us in our place of complete weakness, complete brokenness, and that Jesus was raised for us to give us the promise that tomorrow can be different than today, that patterns can be broken, that new possibilities exist, that because of Jesus' presence in our life, we can experience new tomorrows. And so many of you, I get the chance to talk to people who've been clean from drug addiction. Like you've just what, man, I'm clean for a month, 3 months, a year. It's been 10 years since I've used. Tomorrow can be different than today. For those who are walking through really difficult circumstances and brokenness, but they are trusting and hoping and believing that Jesus is present with me in this, and it's not up to me to solve it, and it's not up to me to get all the resources together. It is up to me to just simply open myself to Jesus, trusting that Jesus is going to meet me in this. Do you believe? Do you trust that I'm able to do this? So Jesus, we're here this morning because we trust you. And Jesus, we see ourselves like these blind men who've stumbled their way in and who followed you into the house and who are sitting at your feet. And we hear you, Jesus, say, do you believe? Do you trust me? And Jesus, we say, yes, Lord. Yeah, Jesus, we trust you with just the faith we have. God, not trying to convince ourselves we have more faith than we really do. Not trying to convince ourselves that there's no doubt in our minds. But just coming as broken people. Jesus, we admit that we need you. Jesus, thank you for the revelation of your goodness, that you are the Son of David. You are a king like the world has never seen. Jesus, you are the one who brought a kingdom that will heal the world. And so, Jesus, would you flood us? God, would you access our life from our place of weakness? And would you meet our needs? Jesus, we just bring our blinding needs to you, our patterns of sin. God, break the chains. Give us the courage to confess our sins, to bring them into the light, to talk to others who are with us, God, brothers and sisters in Christ, God, so that we can be healed and set free. We believe that we can be set free through the power of the resurrected Jesus. Jesus, we bring to you our physical pain. Jesus, we open to you, God, the places where our bodies hurt, where we have just conditions of sickness and disease, and God, where things are not as they should be. And we just hold ourselves open. We say, Jesus, we trust you. We trust, Jesus, in your power to speak and to make well. And so, Jesus, we open ourselves up to that. God, we trust you. We love you. God, we ask and we hold out those places of emotional needs and shame, that you would cleanse us, that you would speak truth to us in our place of shame, that you would remind us that we are, in fact, a child of God. And God, teach us how to be peacemakers, how to heal, how to just see your presence in broken relationships. God, the marriages that are sort of on the brink, that relationships between parents and kids, siblings that are just, God, fighting. God, we need you. We need you to bring healing in these places. God, this is not what you want. So God, touch these places. Touch us in our place of blinding need today. Jesus, we are dependent on your mercy, Son of David.